What if I told you that one of the most important philosophical journeys you could take starts in a prison cell? Not metaphorically, but literally. You wake up in chains. The world outside is on the brink of collapse. Daedra are tearing open the fabric of reality, and somehow, you, a nobody with questionable moral alignment and a tendency to hoard cheese wheels, are humanity's last hope. This is The Elder Scrolls IV: Oblivion. But beneath the memes, the radiant AI chaos, and the accidental thefts that turn entire cities against you, lies something deeper. A game about destiny, identity, and freedom, and what it means to matter in a world that doesn't revolve around you. Today we're diving into the philosophy of Oblivion, its history, and why, nearly 2 decades later, it still has something meaningful to say about our everyday lives. To understand Oblivion, we need to take a step back for a moment. The Elder Scrolls series didn't start with sprawling forest and Patrick Stewart monologues. It began in 1994 with Arena, followed by Daggerfall. Massive, ambitious, and slightly terrifying in scope. These early games focused on scale, vast worlds, endless possibilities, and a lot of procedural chaos. Then came Morrowind in 2002, a turning point in the series. It traded some scale for depth, strange alien landscapes, dense lore, a world that didn't hold your hand. It barely even acknowledged your existence. And then, in 2006, came Oblivion. Developed during a time when RPGs were shifting towards accessibility, Oblivion tried to bridge the two worlds, the complexity of old-school RPGs and the cinematic storytelling that mainstream audiences were beginning to expect. It introduced full voice acting, a more guided main quest, radiant AI systems, and a world that felt genuinely alive. NPCs had schedules, goals, conversations that felt almost human. But beyond the technical advancements, Oblivion marked a philosophical shift for the series. Because for the first time, the question wasn't just, what can you do in this world, but rather, what role do you play in it? At its core, Oblivion is a game about agency. You are not the chosen one. That role belongs to Martin Septim. You are adjacent to destiny, and that's an incredibly important feature when understanding the philosophy that drives Oblivion. Most RPGs put you at the center of everything. You are the hero, the savior, the one person who can fix everything. But Oblivion takes a different approach. You are the facilitator, the enabler, the person who ensures that the real heroes can fulfill their purpose. Philosophically, this aligns with a concept often explored in existential thought. Meaning is not inherent, it is constructed through one's actions. Much like in real life, you are not born important in Oblivion, but rather you become important through what you choose to do with the time you are given. And the game consistently tests this idea. Do you join the Dark Brotherhood and embrace chaos? Do you rise through the Mages Guild in pursuit of knowledge? Do you close Oblivion gates to protect people who will never know your name? Or do you ignore all of it and spend 200 hours decorating a house with stolen forks? No judgment. The point is, this game doesn't tell you what matters, but rather you, as the player, decide what matters. And that mirrors real life more than we'd like to admit. We often wait for some grand sign that we're meant to do something, that there's a clear path or a defined purpose waiting for us. But Oblivion suggests something else. Purpose isn't assigned, but rather it's chosen. Now let's talk about freedom. Oblivion gives you an absurd amount of freedom. You can break into houses, pickpocket guards, accidentally steal a spoon and trigger a citywide manhunt. You can exploit systems, bend mechanics, and completely derail the intended experience, and yet the world responds. Sometimes imperfectly, sometimes hilariously, but it still responds. This is where Oblivion becomes a kind of sandbox for moral experimentation. Not in a heavy-handed, this choice is good, this choice is bad kind of way, but rather in a subtle, emergent way. You learn quickly that actions have consequences, even if those consequences are unpredictable. That guard you annoyed 10 hours ago, he remembers. That NPC you saved, they might thank you, or they might still charge you for a room. It's messy, it's inconsistent, it's human. And that's the point. In real life, outcomes aren't always fair. Good actions don't always lead to rewards, nor do bad actions always lead to punishment. But they shape the world around us in a way that we don't fully see or appreciate. Oblivion captures that beautifully. not through perfect simulation, but through imperfect systems that feel strangely alive. So how then do these ideas translate into our daily lives? We are not, of course, closing Oblivion gates in the midst of our daily routines, at least not in any literal sense. Yet we do navigate a world in which we rarely feel like the central figures, where our actions often pass without recognition, and where our sense of purpose can at times remain obscured. In this regard, Oblivion offers a subtle but meaningful reassurance. Significance in our lives does not depend upon occupying the center of our own narrative, but rather assisting others in their success holds value unto itself. Small but seemingly inconsequential actions carry their own weight. Even the decision to move forward without complete certainty is, in itself, meaningful. The game also underscores the importance of curiosity. One of its defining strengths lies in its encouragement of exploration, not out of obligation, but out of possibility. You enter a cave not because you must, but because you are able to do so. The outcome is uncertain. It may yield rewards, misfortune, or even nothing at all. Yet the act of exploration, the willingness to engage with the unknown, is where the genuine growth occurs. In contrast, everyday life often conditions us to avoid uncertainty, to favor predictability and measured outcomes. Oblivion, on the other hand, embraces the unpredictable. It serves as a reminder that not every decision must be optimized or calculated to perfection. At times, the simple act of choosing a path forward is sufficient in itself. This idea aligns closely with what can be described as a principle of momentum, the notion that progress in life is often less about perfect decisions and more about continued motion. In Oblivion, the world does not pause for you to determine the optimal strategy before acting. Quests unfold concurrently, opportunities appear without warning, consequences accumulate regardless of hesitation. The game, in its own way, rewards forward momentum, even when the movement is imperfect. The same pattern is observable in our everyday life. Clarity frequently emerges after action, not before it. Waiting for absolute certainty can often result in stagnation, whereas taking even a small step forward tends to generate information, experience, and direction that was previously unavailable. Momentum, therefore, becomes not merely a mechanical concept, but a philosophical one. Progress is sustained not by flawless planning or perfect execution, but by the willingness to continue moving, adjusting, and responding to circumstances as they evolve. It would be impossible to discuss Oblivion without acknowledging its distinctive qualities. Its facial animations, for instance, occupy a curious space somewhere between earnest expression and quiet existential distress. Characters smile as though they have just remembered something deeply unsettling and maintain eye contact with an intensity that feels less controversial and more interrogative. The voice acting, while ambitious in scope, occasionally carries the unmistakable acoustics of a recording environment that may well have been, for all practical purposes, a closet. At times, lines are delivered with admirable conviction, at others, with the subtle energy of someone who has just been handed a script moments before recording. And, of course, there are the conversations themselves, brief, abrupt exchanges that unfold with almost philosophical minimalism. Despite, or perhaps because of, these peculiarities, the experience remains strangely compelling. The game is undeniably uneven, frequently awkward, and often unintentionally humorous. Yet these qualities have not diminished its legacy. If anything, they have strengthened it. This endurance points towards a broader truth. Perfection is not a prerequisite for meaning. Authenticity, however, is. Oblivion does not conceal its imperfections. It presents them openly, almost unapologetically. In doing so, it achieves a sense of vitality that many more technically refined games struggle to replicate. Its world feels less like a polished construct and more like something genuinely inhabited, unpredictable, inconsistent, and, in its own way, human. Like many of the themes we discuss on this channel, there is a lesson to be learned here. In our own lives, there is often a tendency to curate, refine, and present only the most polished versions of ourselves to others. Yet what tends to endure in memory, what resonates most deeply, are not the flawless moments, but rather the imperfect ones. The awkward exchanges, the unexpected turns, the instances in which events failed to proceed according to plan, yet nonetheless carried significance. If Oblivion demonstrates anything, it is that imperfection does not diminish meaning. Rather, it is often the very condition that allows meaning to exist in the first place. At the end of it all, Oblivion is more than a game about saving the world. At its core, it's a meditation on what it means to exist within a world that does not inherently revolve around you. It invites the player to consider not only what they are capable of doing, but who they choose to become in the process. It's a story about finding one's place, not as something assigned or predetermined, but as something gradually shaped through action, decision, and consequence. There is no singular path that defines a meaningful existence within Cyrodiil. Instead, meaning emerges through engagement, through the choices you make, the causes you align yourself with, and the responsibilities you either accept or ignore. It is, in many respects, a reflection on how we navigate uncertainty. Rarely are you provided with complete information. Rarely is there a perfectly clear, correct choice. And yet, the world moves forward regardless. In this way, Oblivion mirrors a fundamental aspect of lived experience, that meaning is often constructed in the absence of certainty, not after it. The game also presents freedom not as an uncomplicated virtue, but as something inherently tied to risk itself. You are free to act. You are free to explore. You are free to disrupt. But that freedom also carries consequence, both expected and unforeseen. Chaos is not an exception to the system. It is a natural extension of it, and learning to operate within that unpredictability becomes part of the experience itself. Perhaps most significantly, Oblivion gently challenges the notion that significance is reserved only for those at the center of prophecy. The narrative does not depend on you being the chosen one. Instead, it depends on your willingness to participate, to contribute, to assist, to act when action is required. There is a quiet dignity in that idea, because in both Cyrodiil and in our life, impact is not always defined by recognition or grandeur. Often it is defined by presence, by consistency, by the simple act of showing up when it matters most, and sometimes that is enough. So consider this. If you were placed within Cyrodiil at this very moment, without guidance, without certainty, who would you choose to be? Would you pursue heroism, aligning yourself with order and responsibility? Would you embrace chaos, testing the limits of the world and your place within it? Whatever your answer may be, it reflects something genuine about yourself. If this exploration into Oblivion resonated with you, if it prompted reflection, or perhaps even a moment of recognition, consider supporting the channel. Your engagement allows for more discussions like this, and there may be many more worlds, virtual and otherwise, that remain worth examining. Until next time, that's my rant, and thanks for watching.